What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. This one we're taking a first look at week 2 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. And what I like to do in these videos is kind of go position by position, looking at some of the players that stood out the most to me, just kind of on the eye test. I'm going to put a lineup as we progress through it. And I won't be running any optimizer at the end here just because I have not run projections or anything like that. So this is a more casual, relaxed video, just trying to gauge the slate and kind of go over how I think it's going to play out. And then of course later on in the week I'll do the core plays video, going over all the numbers, ownership, and stuff like that. And not that anybody asked or cares, but I am in the process of moving, so if anything looks different or sounds different, that is why. So there's a heads up as I am working out the kinks still. And if this happens to be your first time here, my name is Chris Pennell. I break down NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. So if that sounds good to you and you want to stick around, leave a like on the video if you do enjoy. Even if you don't, consider doing the same. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or be mean to me in the comments or call me ugly, feel free to do that in the comment section down below, as I'd love to hear from you. And as always, if you guys do want access to anything that I show you here on YouTube, you can find a link down below in the description or the pinned comment. You can try it out completely free, 4 weeks, since Patreon does offer free trials, but I do have all the data you need, color coded nice and neat, so it's easy to follow. Projections, the box scores, at least projected box scores, so covers every single stat if you want to use that for props. The cheat sheets, optimizer, ownership projections in the Discord community, all a fun time. So if you want to try it out, you can. If not, that's totally fine. Let's get into it here. We'll start off with quarterbacks, and I think it's actually a pretty fun slate. There's 3 games that really stand out to me the most. First off, it's going to be pretty obvious here. You're going to see dark shades of green if you look at the Vegas, but 51.5 point over under for this KC Jacksonville game. 3-point spread. That one looks very enticing to me. Also like this Chargers Tennessee game, which I'm hoping kind of goes under the radar a little bit compared to the other 2 games we're talking about. In the last one, we have Jared Goff and Geno Smith in a 49-point over-under and a 5.5 point spread in Detroit. So I think those are going to be the 3 most popular games as of right now. We'll talk through the slate here, but like I said, this is more of a casual video and just kind of going off some of my first initial reactions to the slate here. So let's start top with the man, Patrick Mahomes. $8,300 on DraftKings, $9,000 on FanDuel. I'm assuming he's going to be only a GPP play for me. I can't really see myself spending $8,300 for Mahomes in cash games this week. And a lot of this is going to depend on the health of Travis Kelce, because as we saw, when there's no Travis Kelce on the field, and obviously Tyreek Hill's been gone for over a year now, the weapons are pretty slim in that offense. And I mean, this is no negative to Patrick Mahomes. They did lose that game versus Detroit. He was throwing absolute dots. These guys just could not catch the football. I think Sky Moore, I believe he got a catch. Kadarius Toney had 3 drops. One went right to a Detroit defenseman, and he took it all the way back to the end zone for a pick 6 right through his hands. So I felt bad for Patrick Mahomes. He was throwing absolute dimes, but these guys just could not catch it to save their life. So it's going to depend on if he plays or not. If he plays, Mahomes is certainly in play for GPPs. He doesn't play, I'm probably going to be way more interested in Trevor Lawrence down there at $6,700. He's a 3-point dog at home, but this game should be very back and forth, and we know this Kansas City Chiefs defense can be scored on. Chris Jones did accept the deal, so he's going to be back, which obviously a plus for that defense, but still not too concerned here. Highest total on the slate, and I definitely want some pieces. So love T-Law, love Mahomes, but at T-Law's price point, he's going to be way easier to get to, and the stacks are pretty easy as well, because you have clear options like Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, almost said Gerald Everett, but that's the wrong guy. Who am I thinking of? Oh yeah, Evan Ingram. I think he's totally in play as well. So I love the Jacksonville Jaguars offense in general. Josh Allen, $7,900, fresh off an awful game versus the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers ruptured his Achilles on like the first or second play, whatever it was, didn't complete a pass in that game. And you would have thought easy win for the Buffalo Bills. Nope, they choked it and lost in overtime off a punt return touchdown. I believe Josh Allen had 4 total turnovers, if I remember correctly, a couple of picks, a couple of fumbles. One of those picks was a really nice post route right to I believe it was the safety or whoever it was. But I'm hoping Josh Allen can bounce back here. And it's definitely a really good spot versus Las Vegas Raiders defense. They currently have a 28-point implied team total, and of all the quarterbacks that we're looking at on this slate in the small player pool, that is currently the highest. So Allen is 100% in play, looking for a bounce back game here, and he offers you that rushing upside, so he's pretty safe. I would probably prefer him to Mahomes just because you get that rushing floor baked in as well, which also includes a nice ceiling. They are 8.5-point favorites at home, so the game could always get a bit out of hand, but that's not something I really worry about too much. And obvious stacking option with Stephon Diggs. They should both eat in this one. Justin Herbert, liked him versus Miami. He was fine. He wasn't amazing though. Obviously Tua ended up being the better play. I was on the Herbert side, so I guess that was a bit of a miss there, but I'm willing to go back to the well here on the road in Tennessee. I don't think he's going to get as much ownership as he did last week. Obviously, he was very chalky. But this Tennessee Titans defense can be thrown on. They have a really good stout run defense, but their weakness is through the air. So Herbert, that offense with Allen, Mike Williams, and whoever else it may be out there that wants to catch a pass, they do spread the ball out quite a bit. He's 100% in play here for GPPs. Talked about Lawrence already. I think he's a great option. Anthony Richardson, $6,300. I was starting to really get higher on him as the week progressed last week, and we did talk about him in the updated video where I was like, actually not projecting too bad for me, about 18, 19 points. I think he finished right around 21, if I remember correctly. I thought a large majority of that would be on the ground, which he did get that rushing touchdown. Like any single time around on the goal line, I mean, Richardson's definitely going to be the main factor there to run it in. The guy's huge, like Cam Newton size. So that's always a nice little floor there. And this is definitely a really good matchup versus Houston overall. So I think AR certainly in play. Did get a bit injured in that game, but assuming that's not going to hobble him, I do like him at $6,300. Jared Goff, this is going to be a really good game to target here. And overall, I mean, Goff and the Detroit Lions offense tend to play better at home in the dome. So overall, I like the offense, pretty much the entire offense, really. Like Goff's in play, David Montgomery's in play, Jahmyr Gibbs, if you want to go that route, although we really need to see that usage tick up. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to be one of the safest plays on the entire board. You have the tight end Sam Laporta who made some noise, so I'm loving this game overall. And on the flip side, you could play Geno. I expected a lot more versus the Los Angeles Rams last week. Didn't look all that great overall. The Seahawks offense in the second half just really stalled out. But I think we can get a bounce back week here. We're in the dome, like I said. Detroit's defense, who didn't look too bad versus the Kansas City Chiefs, but does help that the receivers can't catch a ball. But we got good weapons here. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, the rookie from Ohio State. So I think Geno is certainly in play for tournaments. I do like Ken Walker at running back. I feel like he'll end up being very popular. So if that's going to be the popular way to go, maybe the passing attack was a little bit underowned. Then I threw Brock Purdy on here just as like a tournament flyer because I don't think he's going to get too much ownership. That's just my initial reaction. But they have a 26-point implied team total. They're facing the Rams defense, which I know the Seahawks didn't look that great last week, but I do think that the 49ers can have a lot more success here. And we saw how good Brandon Ayuk was, and we still have Deebo Samuel. We have CMC out of the backfield. We have George Kittle. So if you want to try to get a little bit weird and off the chalk, which I do think Goff and Smith will have ownership, Brock Purdy might not be the worst way to go. All right, so moving over to DraftKings here, we're going to have to pick a quarterback, and there's a lot that I like. I want to do Trevor Lawrence, but I feel like everybody's going to be doing that, and he will be quite popular. So let's try to be a little bit different here. And I am going to scroll down, and we're going to go with the man, Jared Goff. Rolling him out. I like him at home here. And while he didn't have an amazing game versus KC, I still think he had 16, 17 points, but I definitely think there's upside for more. Moving over to the running backs, I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to be spending up at the position this week or spending up a wide receiver because it's really early, so I don't want to set anything in stone. But there is several good options whether you want to spend up, go in the middle, or down low this week. And we'll start top with the man CMC, who broke off a really long touchdown in week 1 versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Overall had a pretty darn good game. And we know with his involvement in the passing game is always going to make him viable. Not scared about this Rams defense, and he's an 8-point favorite. Not at home, but definitely should be heavily involved. And that passing work just gets super floor. Saquon Barkley, the New York Giants. They're going to try to get a first down in this one versus the Arizona Cardinals. They put up an absolute gooser versus the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night. What an awful game that was. Just can't get much worse, but they are facing the Arizona Cardinals, arguably the worst team in the league. They come in at 4.5-point favorites on the road in, where are they at? I know it's Arizona. Is it Glendale? I think that's what it is. But I do like Saquon here. I'm assuming the Giants at least put up some points in this one, get some first downs. If they're on the goal line, obviously that's going to be Saquon. Barkley's involved in the passing game, so if we're looking for a resurgence here from the Giants offense, I think Saquon should be a big part of it. Tony Pollard, $7,500. Bit of a tougher matchup here versus the New York Jets, but they are an 8.5-point favorite at home. Zach Wilson at quarterback, so I know they beat the Bills, but I don't think that's going to be sustainable. I don't think they're going to create 4 or 5 turnovers in this one, return a punt, return for a touchdown to win this one in overtime. So I'll take an 8.5-point favorite running back any day on an offense that can put up points, especially one that's as talented as Tony Pollard. Derrick Henry, $7,400. Seems a little bit cheap for a guy that should see 20-plus touches against one of the league's worst run defenses in football, at least last year. Miami didn't really run the ball too much last week because they had some success through the air. So either way, I still think Derrick Henry should be able to eat. And if you are stacking the Chargers, I don't think it's out of the question where you could do like a Justin Herbert Keenan Allen, Mike Williams stack, and then you run it back with Derrick Henry on the ground and get your exposure there, because I know the passing attack for Tennessee isn't that exciting. Then we have ETN, $6,900. I think he got into the end zone late last week, but still the main back here involved in the passing game. Should be a high-scoring game. If you don't want to go with the passing attack, ETN's totally fine. Ken Walker, $5,800. I think this might be one of the higher-owned running backs of the week. I know the Seahawks offense kind of just stalled out in the second half last week, but Walker, $5,800 for a guy that should see 15 touches. He saw the majority of the snaps in that backfield. He's a talented running back. I like that a lot just to get exposure to that game. Could see him being pretty chalky for cash games. David Montgomery played a boatload of snaps last week. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs should probably see the usage bump. I think he only had 7 rushing attempts in that one. Maybe David Montgomery's work goes down, but he got into the end zone, had like a 15-yard touchdown, if I remember. And he's going to be involved in a high-scoring game as a 5.5-point favorite at home with a 27.25 implied team total. He checks all the boxes there, so Montgomery's got to be in play. And then Rachaad White also played a lot of snaps. Gets a nice soft matchup here versus the Chicago Bears run defense that got absolutely killed by Aaron Jones last week, at least touchdown-wise. So I think White's in play, especially if he can catch a couple of passes for us. All right, so moving back over to DK here. Like I said, there's just not a whole bunch of options, but I think there's a nice little group of running backs that people will flock to. And there's a couple others that I didn't even mention that are playable, like a Joe Mixon. Hopefully the Bengals can bounce back because they were awful last week. Of course, the Cleveland Browns, but as a fan, I wasn't too upset about seeing that. Since we have Jared Goff, I'm not going to roll David Montgomery. If I didn't have Goff, I think that would make sense. So let's go with Ken Walker on the other side. And I don't think it's out of the question where we could still play like a DK Metcalf. This game absolutely went bananas last year, and I think we all remember that game where the game stacks just absolutely took you right to the top of pretty much every single contest. So we have Ken Walker in. After that, I'm not exactly sure where I want to go. We could roll with ETN just because I don't think we're going to get any exposure to that game in the passing attack, just based off the lineup that I'm about to build. So if he fits at the end, we will take it. If not, we can always bump that down to a cheaper running back, but we'll roll with it as of right now. And then moving over to wide receiver, I always try to keep this as simple as possible. It just comes down to the quarterbacks that we are playing, the games that we are targeting, the run back options that we have available to us. And obviously, there's always going to be fine one-offs and stuff like that for cash games, and you just can't stack your entire lineup. But if we just took the time and talked about every wide receiver, we'd be here for an hour, and nobody wants to listen for an hour, let alone 20 minutes at that. So up top, we have Stephon Diggs. If you are using Josh Allen, he is the clear-cut, obvious option. Outside of that, I mean, the targets are quite a bit sporadic. Gabe Davis didn't really do too much last night, and then they have like 3 guys competing for wide receiver 3. They have Deontay Hardy, Khalil Shakur, and then I believe Sherfield as well. I don't know if anybody else got some targets off the top of my head, but I feel like there was one guy, I forget his name, had a few targets. I might be wrong there. Either way, I do like Stephon Diggs. Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you're just stacking that game up or using either Jared Goff or Geno Smith, totally fine as a stacking option or run back guy. Calvin Ridley looked like the alpha dog we projected him to be heading into the season. Absolutely killed it in the first game versus the Indianapolis Colts, which obviously not much of a defensive threat, but I think he should definitely be able to have success here versus the Kansas City Chiefs defense. So love Ridley, love Keenan if you're using Herbert or stacking that game up, but I'm not using Tannehill, so I guess it would only have to be with Herbert. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, even Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's totally in play as well. All 3 of those guys should get targets, but DK Metcalf is going to be the top dog. DeAndre Hopkins, if you are stacking it up with like a Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, or even a Mike Williams down here, if you don't want to go the Derrick Henry route, DeAndre Hopkins is fine. It's not as exciting as it used to be rostering Hopkins since he's in Tennessee now, but I mean, he's certainly in the player pool. He will get plenty of targets, or at least a decent target share of the offense, and not really a team that likes to throw the ball too much. Brandon Ayuk, he was incredible in week 1. I think he had 8 targets, 8 catches, got into the end zone twice, I believe. And if you are using Brock Purdy, you have to use either Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel, but you could certainly do both. I mean, yeah, we can just pair those 2 together. Really, you would expect similar production. Projection-wise, they are typically just about the same. Mike Williams, he's your tournament target with Keenan Allen. Christian Kirk, if you're looking to double stack with Trevor Lawrence, he's fine. Zay Flowers, plenty of targets in week 1, had a really good game versus the Houston Texans defense. And Puka Nacua here, the most fun name to say in the NFL right now, he had 15 targets in week 1. So maybe he's the new Cooper Kupp in this offense, but either way, if you are stacking that game up, he's a fine run back option. And Stafford's got to throw the ball to somebody. Obviously no Cooper Kupp since he's on the IR. So it looks like it's going to be a heavy dose of Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. Okay, so moving back over to our build here, since we have Jared Goff, I feel like we are kind of married to Amon-Ra St. Brown, because if Jared Goff goes off, I would assume St. Brown had to have a good chunk of that, and either way, it's the same thing. So we're going to throw in St. Brown. I don't think we absolutely have to double stack with Jared Goff. If we do, Josh Reynolds was actually pretty productive versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and still no J-Mo, so don't have to worry about that. We could also look at Sam Laporta if we want. But for right now, I'm not sure exactly the route I want to go, but I want a run back option with Jared Goff here. And I know we have Kenneth Walker, but I'm fine doubling up on that just because I want more exposure to this game. So we're actually going to roll out DK Metcalf. And I realize it's a decent chunk of salary there, 7,807K. But we didn't really spend too much at running back, and we did save some money at quarterback. And that leaves us just over $4,000 left per player. Factor in a defense and a tight end that's typically decently cheap. We should be able to make this work. In tight end, never really that fun to talk about. Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, they're on here just because they're a talking point. If Kelce happens to miss, great, $3,400. I assume will be a very popular option. Had a handful of points week 1 versus Detroit, but if you're stacking that game up, I mean, he's just really cheap to throw in there. It's like a run back option in a stack with Jacksonville. Obviously, if Kelce plays, I'm not sure exactly how healthy he will be, but if we had the word that he's good to go, I mean, at $7,600, I'd definitely be in my player pool. George Kittle, if you're going with that 49er stack that I do have some interest in this week. Evan Ingram, same thing I said with the Chiefs tight ends. Just stacking this game up, he's an option there. Like if you want to double stack with Trevor Lawrence, you don't want to go with Christian Kirk or Zay Jones, Ingram is totally viable. Gerald Everett, if you're double stacking with Justin Herbert. Sam Laporta would make sense for the lineup that we are building currently. And if I remember correctly, isn't Seattle just absolutely awful versus tight ends? At least they were last year. Yeah, they gave up the second most points in the tight end position last season, so not that it really means too much. I kind of hate looking at that, but Laporta, if we can get 5 targets, we'll take it at that price, and he just correlates well with our lineup. Then we already talked about Noah Gray, and the defenses, they are what they are. I hate that we have to play them, but DraftKings makes us unless you do that super flex Thursday through Monday slate, but I'm not going to be talking about that here. So the first thing I do when we have defenses, I like to scroll to the bottom, look at the Vegas totals, and see what your first viable looking defense might be. Last week was easy. It was the Commanders. They did well for us. I think they had 11, 13 points, something like that. We'll take that any time. It doesn't look like we have a free square this week. The Cardinals are cheap versus the Giants, who looked awful on Sunday night. I do think they bounced back a bit, though, and I don't feel comfortable playing the Cardinals defense. Keep scrolling. All these look awful. Falcons, maybe, but even then, I don't love it. But they are at home. Still a dog. Packers defense versus the Atlanta Falcons. I think that's at least on my radar. The Buccaneers defense I could see being the most popular. 3-point favorite at home versus Justin Fields, who I'm not overly concerned about. 19-point implied team total. I think the Bucs might be the chalk defense, just eyeballing it here. Outside of that, unless you're spending up, I do think the Bucs would look somewhat the best there. All right, so we're going to head back over to our build here and finish this off. So let's plug in Sam Laporta at tight end. I'm not saying he's my favorite play, but he does fit for this build. So we do that double stack with Jared Goff, and we have 2 run back options on Seattle. So we're just kind of full on stacking this game up. Let's throw in the Bucs defense to see what kind of money we have to work with. I wish we could find a cheaper one. Maybe we can, but as of right now, I'm not loving much. At wide receiver, I didn't really like any of the cheap ones, just eyeballing it this week. Again, this is not in-depth research. It's just me kind of glossing over the slate. We have about $4,600 left per player. Nico Collins is in that range. He got a lot of targets last week. I don't think I would be against Nico here versus this Colts defense. I probably should have had him on the wide receiver pool, to be honest. So we can throw Nico in there. Tutu's pretty cheap. We have Zay Jones if we're just looking to get cheaper exposure to Jacksonville, but we already have Travis Etienne. Like I said, though, if we want to jump off Etienne and save some money, we can do that. It's not an absolute must that we have him here. But I believe Puka is $4,100, so we'll throw him in there. We have $4,300 for the flex spot, which I realize isn't too great. Van Jefferson's down there, but I'm not double stacking up the Rams. So actually, if we did take Travis Etienne down a bit and we found a cheaper running back, maybe like a Rashad White, that actually wouldn't go too poorly with the Buccaneers defense. You had that slight correlation there. That gives us $5,700, and we have a little bit more breathing room. And there's actually several good players here. So we have Mike Williams, Brandon Ayuk, who actually were 100 less on that. So we have Mike Williams, Cam Akers, who got a lot of carries last week, but didn't really equate to much. We have Deebo Samuel, which is nice because we can't quite afford Brandon Ayuk. So let's use your imagination there, but I don't think it's a bad looking first look. Just kind of first initial reactions on the slate. But with that being said, guys, that's all I got for you this week. I hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so. I'll post my more updated core plays video later on in the week, so be on the lookout for that. I appreciate y'all watching, and I'll see you all